Hello everyone, I am John Patrick Mecha, one of the editorial staff of the Palawan Scientist Journal, and the topic I want to talk about is the publication process of the Palawan Scientist. Paradoxically, submitting a research paper for journal publication can be both anticlimactic and highly rewarding. It could be anticlimactic because the writer's work will be subjected to scrutiny, and reviewers may put harsh comments which can be depressing sometimes. However, if we consider that these comments are made to make our work perfect, and having able to publish a peer-reviewed paper is something that we can be proud of and increases our credibility as researchers. It is always a relief, of course, to get the work done and sent off on what could be a long and rewarding journey towards publication. However, publishing a manuscript in a journal should not be done in a hurry because each journal are following set of standards of guidelines to publish a paper in a timely and efficient manner. The Palawan Scientist, a peer-reviewed journal, is one of the journals that strictly follow the ethical standard of publication, where all submitted manuscripts need to undergo profound evaluation and review to check its validity and suitability for publication. And I am going to share this process with our virtual audience. In this slide, we can see the life cycle of the manuscript in the Palawan Scientist, from submission to publication. Usually, after the submission of the manuscript, it will take 5 stages before a paper can be accepted for publication. The process starts with pre-evaluation, the internal review, peer review, another internal review, proofreading, and the publication. The manuscript will be processed within approximately 4 months before it will be posted online. Sometimes, the manuscript will be processed much longer when needed. To learn more on how the manuscript is being forged in accordance with the journal's format and guidelines, I will discuss each of these stages in the succeeding slides. Before we submit a manuscript in any reputable journal like the Palawan Scientist, the author should also submit the following: cover letter, copyright transfer statement, and the checklist for authors, which are downloadable in the Palawan Scientist website. Now, let's talk about the meaning and the content of a cover letter. A cover letter is a formal way to communicate with journal editors and editorial staff during the manuscript submission process. It should explain why your work is perfect for their journal and why it will be of the interest to the journal's readers and the editor. It contains the institution letterhead, date, recipient's name and address, salutation, the body, and the complimentary clause. In the body of a cover letter, it should indicate the title of the manuscript, brief description of the research paper, its importance and novelty, and why the readers will be of interest in reading it. A statement should also be included that the manuscript is an original work and has not been previously published or submitted simultaneously for publication elsewhere. Lastly, it should also include the names, contact details, and the link to publication of at least 3 qualified reviewers who are not affiliated to the author. Next is the copyright transfer statement. Copyright transfer is an agreement that transfers the copyright for a work from the copyright owner to another party. It covers the exclusive right and license to produce, publish, distribute, and archive the article in all forms and media of expression now known or developed in the future. Here we have a template for a copyright transfer statement for authors to fill in. First, the author shall encircle or underline what type of paper shall be submitted. Second, the title of the article. Third, corresponding and co-author's name with signature. And lastly, the date. The last document that the author should prepare is the checklist for authors. This checklist is derived from the Guide for Authors of the Palawan Scientist. It is divided in 3 parts, namely types of papers, the manuscript preparation guidelines, and other documents. This form is answerable with yes, no, and not applicable by highlighting or checking the appropriate box at the end of the statement that best describe the submitted manuscript. The main reason why the checklist for authors was made is to make the guidelines direct, straightforward, and easy to follow. However, some authors are lazy to following the instruction in the checklist. They highlight or check the box with yes inappropriately, which does not match with the manuscript submitted to the journal. In most cases, these instructions for authors is not being followed, but we don't immediately reject the paper. Instead, the editorial staff will return the manuscript to the author and advise to strictly follow the checklist. In the second time that the author committed the same misrepresentation, outright rejection shall be served. I will show you an example of how does the author misrepresent the checklist. Above photo is a checklist submitted by an author and the referencing style used. As you see in part 2 under general guidelines at number 2, the author followed the referencing style of the Palawan scientist by checking the yes box, but it does not match with the submitted manuscript in the reference list below. For the Palawan scientist referencing style, there should be no comma and period between the last name and the initial names. The title of the article should be in sentence case, and only the first letter of the proper noun is capitalized. The journal's name and the volume number should not be italicized. Lastly, web link should be replaced with full link of the OI, if applicable. Again, guidelines for authors is the core part of the journal. Deliberate ignorance and repeated misrepresentation of this checklist will be recommended for outright rejection. Upon the receipt of the manuscript, the editorial staff shall acknowledge the email. The paper shall be assigned with a manuscript number at the header, and article information shall be placed at the end of the manuscript. However, emailed manuscript with incomplete attachments, which the journal is requiring, will be automatically returned to the author without any emendation. During the pre-evaluation or pre-screening stage, the editorial staff shall evaluate the completeness of the manuscript and the formatting required of the article using the checklist for authors and plagiarism checker. The editorial staff shall assess the manuscript as to whether the author strictly followed the checklist. This process normally takes about 10 to 15 working days. However, if the checklist is misrepresented, the author shall then be required to revise the manuscript and return it within 15 to 30 working days, and it shall be evaluated again using the checklist for authors until the formatting of the journal has been followed. However, constant misrepresentation to the checklist shall be ground for rejection. When the manuscript passed the screening in stage 1, it shall be sent for internal review, where the internal editor shall evaluate the paper in terms of substance using the guide for reviewers. This guide for reviewers would help the internal editor to easily evaluate and assess whether the manuscript is publishable or not. The editor can also write feedback or comments on the manuscript. This form contains questions which are answerable with yes or no. The statements in this evaluation form describe the standard content quality of a manuscript. After the internal editor evaluated each part of the manuscript based on this evaluation form, the editor shall decide whether the manuscript is accepted without revision, with minor revision, published after major revision, or rejected. And the last part provides option for the internal editor to include some general comments and suggestions. The author is also furnished with this form, but we firstly remove the name of the internal reviewer to maintain anonymity. This may take within 15 to 30 working days or more depending on the number of articles being evaluated. After the evaluation, the author shall be notified through email if the manuscript is accepted for stage 3 or the paper needs revision. The author shall then be required to send back the revised manuscript within 30 to 60 working days depending on the amount of the work needed to revise the paper. For rejected articles, authors shall be informed using our form. Let's move to the core of the publication process, the peer review process. Peer review is a process of subjecting the author's scholarly work, research ideas to the scrutiny of others who are experts in the same field and to improve the quality of the manuscripts that are deemed suitable for publication with 3 satisfied aspects: originality, importance of the work to the reader, novelty, and scientific reliability. Initially, 2 qualified external reviewers shall handle the stage. External reviewers are selected in terms of their expertise and publication related to the manuscript to be reviewed. After receiving the comments from external reviewers, the internal editor shall evaluate and consolidate the review made by the external reviewers within 5 working days. The author shall be notified through email if the manuscript is accepted for proofreading or stage 5. However, if the paper needs revision, the author shall immediately be informed. In revising a paper, the author shall be required to make a matrix which summarizes the response to the comments of the reviewers, and the same changes shall be highlighted on the manuscript through color coding. The revised manuscript together with the matrix shall send back within 30 to 60 working days and to be examined by the internal editor. It is important that the changes mentioned in the matrix can be easily found in the revised manuscript. A mismatch between matrix and manuscript can further delay the publication process. Here on the left, we have an example of a color-coded matrix. In the matrix, the author highlighted the text of the manuscript using color coding, which are blue as response for the reviewer 1, violet for reviewer 2, pink for reviewer 3, and red as personal single revision made by the author. In the third column, the author responded to the comments of the reviewer 1 by locating the page and line number in the original text and revised the text in accordance with the reviewer's comments and suggestions. In the revised color-coded matrix, we can see a match between the matrix and the manuscript. In some cases, there is a mismatch between the matrix and the manuscript. To avoid this, it is important for the author to check before submitting the revised paper. The fifth stage is proofreading. In this stage, the article which passed stage 4 shall be sent to a language critic for evaluation in terms of grammar, spelling, and style to ensure coherence. Paper which requires revision shall be returned and the author shall be asked to respond within 7 to 15 working days. Lastly, the final stage or publication stage. When the manuscript is ready for publication, a galley proof shall be prepared by editorial staff for approval of the author and shall be posted online ahead of its date of publication. This is the example of galley proof, which is the same to the official published article. However, this version still has line numbers and lacks information about the volume and page numbers. Ideally, the span of time for a manuscript from the moment it was received by the journal until its publication will take approximately 4 months. However, sometimes it takes a year for a paper to get published due to several factors such as failure to follow the guidelines of the journal, poor quality of the manuscript, availability of the reviewers, and the author's ability to address the reviewers' comments. The publication of a paper can be a lot easier when the author knows how to follow the guidelines of the journal, submit a well-polished paper which has been reviewed by his or her colleagues, and the suggested reviewers have credible publication track record. In a nutshell, the publication process is both beneficial to the journal and the author. It provides efficiency in moving submitted manuscript through the publication system so that worthy studies can be successfully published in a timely fashion for readers as well as authors. If you experience publishing in a journal which does not employ this kind of rigid publication process, you must be worried, as you may have selected a suspected predatory journal. In the Palawan Scientists, we try to find your mistakes to make your work perfect. Thank you and a pleasant day, everyone.